All right, we are back with another episode. Today, I have a very special guest with me. I'm very excited to announce that we have James 300 Foster on the podcast today. James, thank you so much for coming on and tell people why you're on the experience today.
Man, I'm just honored to be on here. We met back at the Vigor Summit, which was a really cool place to meet and see how small the world is. Meeting another jiu-jitsu practitioner at the summit was really cool. And man, I was looking at some of the guests you've had on your podcast, and I'm a little nervous. I got a big shoes to fill here.
Nah, listen, I only bring on people that are going to create impact, and I have no doubt that you will do that.
Well, that's awesome. I just am honored that you would like to have me on here, and I will do my best to meet and exceed all the expectations.
I don't doubt it for a second, man. So really, I'll get right into it. Is if you could, since maybe people don't know who you are, maybe you could tell a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So martial arts has been my life, the majority of my life. So I started karate when I was 10 years old, and took a little convincing of my parents, to let me get into martial arts. It was right around the time, funny enough, that the Karate Kid, the original Karate Kid movie came out, and that was around the same time that they saw that, and they allowed me to start training in karate. So I did a style of karate called Amka Jitsu, which was basically labeled as karate, but was more of a similar style to Jeet Kune Do. So the motto that they had back then was, if it works, we use it. So we trained a lot of different martial arts under that label of karate. So we did techniques from judo and taekwondo and aikido and everything you can think of. So I got a lot of experience with that. I did that for around 9 years, and that was about the time where a little bit before those 9 years was up was when a lot of us saw the first UFC, and we're like, what is this Hoist Gracie guy doing? How is he being so effective in beating these larger, stronger opponents? So myself and a few of the other black belts there at the karate school became interested in jiu-jitsu, and through using bootleg VHS recordings of the UFC, we started trying to extrapolate and reverse engineer what we were seeing him do, and we would get together on Wednesday nights and try to learn how to grapple and how to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu without having an actual coach. And we actually did that a couple of years before I branched out and started my jiu-jitsu journey officially, and that's the journey I've been on ever since. I want to say it's going on 22 years now that I've been on my jiu-jitsu path.
That's amazing. What do you think over the years really has helped you stay so focused on really broadening your martial arts experience, especially jiu-jitsu?
Man, for me, eventually becoming an instructor and seeing how martial arts can have a positive impact and, just bring so much positivity and positive change to people's lives, that's really been the driving force for me over the years. Of course, I feel jiu-jitsu is endless. So as far as my own personal journey, I've never felt like I know it all. I'm always trying to improve areas of my game and just try to have a complete and overall understanding of jiu-jitsu as a whole, which I think no matter how long we train, no matter how long we're alive, you're never going to reach that point where you've learned it all. And so that's been a constant motivator for me, is just always trying to improve every aspect of my jiu-jitsu, both as a practitioner and as an instructor.
Yeah, I think they say, the famous saying is that you only start learning once you become a black belt. And I think
Yeah,
that
and
holds.
honestly, I always thought that was a cliche thing until I got my black belt. So I got my black belt back in 2005,
Woo!
and I can honestly say it really was like one of those things where you realize how little you actually know, and I can honestly tell you that I've learned way more since I became a black belt than I did on the journey prior to that, all the years before, all the different belt ranks before. So that saying that seems cliche about it being like the beginning, it's actually true. I can attest to that.
That's awesome. So, what do you think usually stops maybe someone from, and I don't want to say getting their black belt because there's so many people that stop right after their, when they get their blue belt. What do you think when people, I don't want to say stop learning, but stop having an open mind? What do you think separates you from maybe some others that, do have their black belt, but stay in that same school, don't attend seminars, because I know you're very into bringing in other practitioners into your facility. So what do you think is that separation?
Yeah, I like to go out and seek knowledge from other people. I like to personally attend seminars. I like to bring people from other affiliations into my school to teach seminars. Again, I think it just goes back to wanting to have that overall and complete understanding of jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is so endless, and if you're open-minded, my friend Keith Owen would say that you need to approach jiu-jitsu with a child's mind. So a child doesn't have all these preconceived notions and limitations and mental blocks that a lot of times adults do when it comes to taking in and applying information. And I think a lot of people, when they start getting into that jiu-jitsu journey and they start to think they have some of the right answers and things, they can kind of become closed off to taking in that knowledge and being receptive to it in the manner that I feel that you should be. I think the ultimate goal should be to learn every aspect of jiu-jitsu and not put labels on it. Everybody loves to label everything, big guy jiu-jitsu, little guy jiu-jitsu, gi jiu-jitsu, no gi jiu-jitsu, self-defense jiu-jitsu, sport jiu-jitsu. And if something is effective, it doesn't matter what the label is, you should be training it. If it meets the core principles behind jiu-jitsu of technique, timing, and leverage, you should be training that. It doesn't matter if it has the label of sambo or no gi grappling, 10th planet, whatever it may be. You should be open to taking in that and having it as best of an understanding as you can of all aspects of this wonderful grappling style that we're in.
I think that you get that mindset from your original martial art, the Jeet Kune Do maybe facility that you, because a lot of guys are so, it's almost like their game is their game. They don't ever go off of the plan,
Absolutely, and a lot of people kind of get, I don't know, it might be mean to say brainwashed, but, we all think that our guy is the guy. It's like he's the best guy, and a lot of times, having that approach is, I'm under this guy, and everything he shows is the best there is out there, so... why would I need to go anywhere else? All I need to do is continue training under him. He knows everything. Well, the bottom line is, guys, your instructor doesn't know doesn't know everything. He knows a lot of things, but there's no way he can know everything there is to know about jiu-jitsu and about grappling. And none of us do. And just because somebody has a black belt around their waist, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. We're all human. We all have our limitations. We all have mistakes we make. We all have holes in our game. you get to a certain point where you can mask a lot of those things, but, nobody has all the answers. Anybody that tries to sell you on having all the answers, that should be a big red flag for you. You have to be willing to seek out knowledge and train in different areas, train with different people. Cross training is looked at differently depending on who you're under. I would say this in regard to cross training. I think it's great to go out to seminars and to learn from other people. As far as cross training at other local academies, I don't have a problem with that as long as it only takes up about 10% of your overall training. So 90-10, you should be at your home academy 90% of the time, and then if you have your instructor's permission to go out and train at other facilities from time to time, if it's an every now and again thing, I think that's great. Where I think there's a problem is when somebody is spending more time at another academy as opposed to their home academy. So I think if you're going out and you're learning from other people, that's a great thing. You just have to have that home base, and the majority of your training should be under that affiliation, your home affiliation that you're receiving your rank from.
Yeah, you know what? It's so funny as you're like talking about, the whole concept. It's almost actually relates to, having a nutrition coach or a fitness coach or a business coach, and sticking with the rules and knowing your base and seeking out other information, but knowing where, knowing what the fundamentals are and where your fundamentals came from.
Absolutely. And I think it's important for people to understand the reasoning behind that philosophy. My reasoning behind that is if you have a qualified instructor, if you have a great jiu-jitsu instructor who's top level, they have an underlying curriculum and theme and things they're trying to impart to you. And if you're not doing the majority of your training with them, you kind of end up with the too many chefs in the kitchen scenario.
Absolutely.
Where you maybe get set a little bit astray and you start to deviate from those principles and things that your head instructor is trying to impart to you over all your years of training with him or her. So I think it's important to understand you chose to train with your instructor for a reason. That's your home academy for a reason. And I think a big part of the reasoning behind wanting to make sure that 90%, I'll say 90% or more of your training is with your head instructor is because you're trying to glean all of that information and the underlying messages that they're trying to impart to you through their jiu-jitsu instruction.
Absolutely. So being, again, a guy that really likes to bring in more information and I share information, it's a big thing that people are constantly putting out content, and I say that with air quotes, instructional DVDs and
right. The quality control becomes an issue, right?
Yeah, but then you have someone like yourself who is a high-level black belt and is putting out great free content. What do you think as far as that mindset separation of why you doing it as opposed to some others?
Well, I can only speak for myself.
Yeah.
What I want to do with the stuff that I put out is just to, give people the information and see jiu-jitsu grow as a whole. So all I can do is focus on, putting out what I consider to be the best content. Obviously, I'm very busy with running my academy, so it can become hard to regularly get content out. I'm actually really excited. I'm going to be recording my first actual instructional series. that will be available as a digital purchase for people that want to download. Awesome. So that's kind of my focus for this year, is getting that filmed and produced and everything. A lot of people don't know I have a background in some digital design and things, so I know how to edit video and do graphic design, and enough to get myself in trouble. So, cool. So it'll take me a while to get it done because I'll be recording everything and editing everything and all that. But yeah, I'll still be putting free stuff on YouTube for everybody. I think that's important. I think passing on my knowledge and things I've learned over the years, and giving people what I feel is highly detail-oriented, clear instruction.
Quality stuff.
I think that's, because anybody can get on there and put up techniques, any white or blue or, whatever color belt can get on there and put on techniques, and that's great. It's just the person who's taking in that information needs to do a little bit of research and make sure that's coming from a quality source, which, if you go to your instructor and ask, hey coach, is this move I saw legit, and have them look at it, if you have a good coach, they'll be able to tell you, what he showed here is a little bit off, or if the person is actually, trying to resist, that's going to be a very low percentage move to try to pull off. I think that's the thing I see the most is a lot of the techniques I see that I would consider to be not to the type of technique I would show would be one where there's like 30 steps and it only works if the other person is just letting you do all 30 steps.
Yeah.
Me, that's like, okay, well, if this guy was actually not just falling right into the move, would that technique and would that setup still work? So that's a good set of filters to put the techniques through. Also, with a lot of the techniques, you can go out and view. I mean, if they're coming from like Lovato or one of these guys where you've seen them do those techniques live in competition, or you've seen them hit those techniques live and rolling with high-level people, that's a legit move.
Yeah.
All right? There's Absolutely. No question about it, because I know for myself personally, all the things I show are things that I regularly do on high-level black belts, either being my own students or people that come in and visit from other schools, or stuff I've pulled off in competition. So that's the stuff I'm going to show because I have the experience and I know that it works regularly in an actual live rolling or competition sparring.
I was going to say, just they're real impact moves. They're not, it looks cool, but it's not a practical kind of thing. And that actually leads me right into the next question is, you are more of a, hey, this will make an impact kind of approach type of guy. How do you think that plays a role in dripping into your students and maybe some of the other people in your life? Is maybe the way you carry yourself, how that works?
Well, like I said earlier, for me, the focus of everything I do is how can I help others through the small, relatively small influence I feel I have in the jiu-jitsu community. So I'm always looking for ways to try to branch out and do a lot of charity things and help to impact other people's lives in a positive way. I think if you have any kind of voice or platform that you can use to help others, that's a great thing to do. So I focus a lot of my energy on that, and I talk about all those things with my students. I say, in fact, I was talking about this in class the other day. I said, guys, this is all these techniques and cool things that we learn in here is such a small part of the big picture of what the power of jiu-jitsu is. The power of jiu-jitsu is being able to help positively influence and affect people's lives. I've personally seen people, well, I'm sure you have too, people lose hundreds of pounds and get their health
Absolutely.
back. People get off of medications, people with severe depression. I work with a lot of veterans through the We Defy Foundation, and just seeing those guys get off of their medication or have their PTSD symptoms improve or their depression improve through the training and the camaraderie that they get in the Jiu-Jitsu Academy is just amazing. And there's thousands and thousands of people that have had that benefit from training in Jiu-Jitsu.
That's incredible.
My student, yeah, it's incredible. It's
really
incredible as an instructor to realize how much responsibility we have in that regard.
Absolutely.
I have a student.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
Okay, yeah, I was just going to say I have a student, her name is Elena Stoll, and Elena wrote a book called Flowing with the Go, A Jiu-Jitsu Journey of the Soul. And what that was about was how basically the place that she was at when she found Jiu-Jitsu, and she had her daughter pass away unexpectedly from a heart condition they didn't know that she had. So she was in a very bad place physically and mentally when she ended up finding jiu-jitsu, and that's what her book talks about. And it was amazing to me, when we talk about the responsibility as an instructor that we have, man, I'll tell you, the words you choose to use and the things you say and how you interact with others, I really realized how much people listen when I read Elena's book. Because in Elena's book, she had written down like every little lesson I passed on in class, every little thing I had said to her, and she had taken those things and applied them, those principles of jiu-jitsu, and applied them to her life and helped, pull herself out of a really bad place.
Man, that's incredible.
So that was when I stood back and I was like, whoa, my philosophy, I always try to make sure that my last interaction with somebody, or, my interactions with somebody, if that was the last interaction we ever had, that they knew how I cared about them, how much I respected them, and all these different things. I try to treat people in that manner to where, if I pass away 5 minutes from now, you'll have no questions about the type of person I was and how I felt about you. And I think that's really important for people to do because, again, when I read all those things, like half the stuff that she had in there, I didn't even remember saying at first until I thought back and I did say that. But it's amazing the power that our words can have, both positively and negatively. That's the things that people need to realize.
For sure, man. That is definitely powerful stuff. I think for anybody, not just for someone who's a coach, I think we all play such an important role, whether in our kids' lives or spouse or friends, that maybe sometimes we say something and maybe we may think we're coming from a good place and we say it in just the wrong way and it could destroy them, or vice versa. You say the smallest thing to someone and all of a sudden you've changed their entire day, you've changed their entire outlook.
Yeah, and you never know when that person needs to hear that, if that was the thing they needed to hear at that time. How many stories have you heard about people that were on their way to jump off a bridge and commit suicide, and somebody either smiled at them or asked them how they were doing, and just the fact that person cared enough to ask them that changed their path, and they decided not to take their own life because, somebody actually cared about me, when they're in a spot where they feel like nobody cares and they're just in total despair. Yeah,
absolutely. Look what's going on, unfortunately, around the country with all this chaos and
I think everybody in the world could benefit from training in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I always.
Especially our politicians.
Oh my God, so funny. Me and my wife were watching the Olympic Games last night, and they had this It's an Olympic sport. It's called sliding, and literally, it's a guy on a sheet of metal that's like it's like an inch from the ground, and they're going head first, not in a bobsled, but just sliding. Not in a bobsled, just sliding head first down.
I think I might stand a chance on being in the Olympics now after hearing that.
Oh my God. Like the fact that something like that can be a sport, and then something like jiu-jitsu, which is it just changes your life so much, and your mindset is, it's just so funny.
I kind of have a I don't know if it's a weird stance, but I actually don't want to see jiu-jitsu in the Olympics. And I'll tell you why.
I'd love to hear.
Look what's happened to judo. You got a lot of people leaving judo because after judo became part of the Olympics, they started removing a lot of things and changing a lot of things and doing a lot of crazy stuff as far as how they changed the martial art as a whole. And I think that's really dangerous. I don't want to see that happen to jiu-jitsu. I mean, look how upset people are just with IBJJF.
I was just gonna say, look at the controversy.
Just the little things they've done in there. I mean, people freak out over. But I mean, look at judo right now. Like they can't do any. They can't do any takedowns that involve grabbing the legs.
Yeah.
Like more of a wrestling style takedown. Man, I know I had a huge influx of new jiu-jitsu students when they did that. People that left judo. I actually had quite a few high-level judo people quit judo and come in and start training in BJJ because they're like, man, enough is enough. They keep making these crazy rule changes. And I think they have a rule now where you can't, basically you can't do 2-on-1 to break the collar grip in certain situations.
Oh, wow. That's terrible.
Yeah, so I mean, I think a lot of those things started happening when it became an Olympic sport and continue to happen. And also, just the overall way that judo has changed as far as their way of doing paid promotions and all of that is kind of strange to me. And they took a lot of the ground techniques out when it became an Olympic sport too. Like they only have like 20 seconds on the ground now, and they really have to be showing that they're doing something, otherwise they get stood up instantly.
Yeah, so I just don't know.
I just don't know, man. I don't know if it would benefit or improve our sport other than having of course a international showcase or platform for people to see kind of what our martial art is.
But you know what? I think the beauty of jiu-jitsu, you have, leagues like EBI and Polaris that are so off the realm of the IBJJF and the gi jiu-jitsu. So, And
here's the thing that I say. You go in, or you should go into whatever competition you're doing with an understanding of that rule set. So if you're going in there with an understanding of what the rules are, and then you get disqualified for breaking or bending the rules, you don't have the right to be upset.
Absolutely.
And there's a simple solution. If you don't like the rule set, don't compete in that style of competition. Go to EBI or go to one of these other submission-only events, or an event that does allow the things that you like to do when you roll.
Absolutely.
It's an easy fix, right? Because obviously I don't think the IBJJF is going to change.
No, and I think
as far as a lot of those things, because their main concern is protecting the competitors.
Exactly. It's a competition for them.
Could you argue that they're overly protective in some cases? Yeah, you could argue that. You could argue that at the black belt level, you should understand how to defend a heel hook. I mean, you should understand certain things as a black belt.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could argue for all those things, but is you arguing going to change what they've established and been doing for many, many years successfully? I don't know that it is.
Yeah.
So I think it's great seeing all these other formats out there and all these other platforms that are being provided for people to test themselves in.
Yeah, agreed. I think that, it's when you go into a competition, you really, like you said, knowing the rules, understanding that, hey, in a IBJJF competition, it's a point-driven system. You better be practicing those points, and it's something that, I train at Sarah Jiu-Jitsu, and something that they do at the academy is they have competition preparation, like going over the rule set and making sure because, hey, if you're gonna,
you need to prepare your students for the most common aspects that they're going to run into of understanding the points and the rules. That's our job as instructors, is to impart that to our students. And then also the student needs to go out and read the rules, and if they have any questions about it, bring it back to their instructor and say, Coach, I don't understand. What does this mean? And then the coach can show them so they don't go in the tournament and accidentally, get disqualified for doing something that's easily preventable. But what I find is a lot of times the coaches don't even understand the rules.
Yeah.
So I've gone to many of the IBJJF ref certification meetings and realized very quickly how many people don't understand the rules. So it's our responsibility to understand and to try to play within that rule set as best we can. And take personal responsibility for messing up if we go in there and mess up. And hey, you're right, it is those style of tournaments, it's more about that strategy of getting those points and keeping those points, and a lot of times, people will choose to run out the clock and win the match that way. I've lost many a match because my mentality is to try to go for the finish.
Yeah.
I've been up on points on many occasions and tried something that got me in trouble, and I end up losing on points. I would rather lose that way than go out there and try to stall and try to play the strategy of getting an advantage point and pulling guard just at the right time on the clock so I can run the clock out and my opponent doesn't have time to advance or get any points before the timer runs out.
Absolutely.
That's just not me. And that's not what I teach my students to do.
I was going to say that's exactly what's going to play into your legacy as a competitor, is not someone that just tried to, play you played by the rules but didn't play to the rules,
I think the ultimate expression of our jiu-jitsu in competition is being able to finish the other person. Now, with that said, and I think that should be your mentality. With that said, if you're in the points competitions, you need to be aware of the points, and you're going to have times where you are not going to win unless you play a little strategy and be aware of, okay, I don't have enough time left on the clock to finish this guy. I am going to have to maintain position, and I'm going to end up winning on points or by advantage. But that shouldn't be, in my opinion, your sole goal in how you're going to win your match. And I think we see a lot of that. I think we see a lot of people playing for that. That's why I like watching people like Lovato and Salo and Shanji and all of these gentlemen go out and compete, because they're always looking to get the finish.
Absolutely. Who would you say, that you went right into my next question, is some of the people that have influenced you along the way? Who would you say the three are that had maybe the most influence on where you are today?
Three, man, it's hard to pick, but I would say I would have to say my professor, Jiva Santana, has had the most impact on me over the years. And then as far as external sources of knowledge, you got to give me 4.
Okay, go ahead.
I got to
give
put
you
these
5.
guys together.
I'll give you even 5.
So we'll just, how
4.
about we just say that my instructor was a given?
Okay, perfect.
And then the 3 outside sources, I would say Salo, Shanji, and Lovato.
Yeah. Those are 3 pretty good guys to follow, man.
Those are people that not only their approach in how they compete I look up to, but also how they teach and the style of jiu-jitsu that they teach that I really admire and look up to.
Yeah, Lovato has always been a huge influence for me, especially just his whole concept, his martial arts as a whole, let alone just...
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So. I really liked when he was doing that Save Jiu-Jitsu campaign, too, a couple years ago. That was pretty cool. He was trying to get people to realize what we were talking about a moment ago about, man, Jiu-Jitsu's about being able to finish the other guy. Like, your goal shouldn't be to just stall.
Yeah, and again, that's why he's such an entertaining practitioner, jiu-jitsu guy. Now, even in his MMA career, taking it to the next level,
absolutely.
It really shows in his approach from one art to the next how he's such a pressure guy and going for the finish no matter what, which is awesome.
It's funny too when we're talking about the strategies and things, and I don't know if a lot of people have picked up on this, but over all the years of watching jiu-jitsu, it used to be that the smaller guys was the ones that everybody wanted to watch because their matches were always really exciting and they were always going for the kill and trying to get the finish. And now here in the recent years, it's shifted to where it's the big guys, like the super heavies and the ultra heavies, that have that style of jiu-jitsu, like your Buchechas and guys like that are going in there and going for it, attacking constantly. So I find it interesting. It's kind of shifted, and I wonder if it'll shift back again, and it'll be the small guys again who are having that type of jiu-jitsu and competition, and the bigger guys become boring again. I find it interesting.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm interested to see how Gordon Ryan does in the gi coming up next year.
I think Gordon is going to surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, he's incredible talent.
I think Gordon is going to do a lot better than probably people think he will do.
Yeah. I mean, you have such a array of quality guys there that I don't think he's going to get his shortage of hard work in the gym, so...
No, and I don't think they'll put him into anything he's not well prepared to face, you know.
Yeah, they have a ton of experience as far as competition.
Yeah, they've got Danaher.
Yeah, well,
they got the mastermind. I'm sure he will be able to come up with a good strategy for Gordon to implement when he goes in and starts playing around in the gi competitions. So
yeah, but it'll be interesting to see against Keenan, man. Keenan.
Yeah, he'll have some tough matches for sure, and probably if anything does, come around and bite him, it will be when somebody plays that strategy to just stall him out and get ahead on points. Yeah. That'll probably be a tough adjustment for him at first, and I think he's a very talented young man, and he's only like 21.
Yeah, he's got a bright future.
He's got so many, like if he's this good now, can you imagine 5 or 6 or 10 years from now even?
Yeah, when he's like 28, 29, rolling into his peak, that's going to be scary.
Yeah.
If he's still competing, because he may not even need to compete, and he'll be the greatest of all time before he's even 25.
It's funny when we start talking about age and these expectations on age and all these different things and getting quote unquote older as competitors. I see all these things talking about how competing over 30 or competing in the Masters division is somehow easier And it's, as somebody who has done both, I'll tell you, competing at Masters black belt is way harder to win than adult. At least for me, it was way harder to win. If you think about it, you've got less time to work with. So you have a shorter amount of time. You got 5 or 6 minutes to get it done. Then when you throw points into into that mix, it's even more difficult. You don't have 10 minutes to mess with and to strategize. And you're going against guys who are extremely experienced.
The experience level.
Extremely experienced and already multiple-time world champions in most cases. I think that's why I don't even like to look a lot of times at the names on paper when I look at, when my bracket comes up, because I'm like, if I go in there with all the accomplishments these guys have in the back of my mind, I'm going to psych myself out a little bit. I think in 2015 when I won Master Worlds, everybody that I went against in my division was a very accomplished competitor with many titles, on their resume. And I think people just don't realize that there's no substitute for experience when you get in there. You're going to tell me that going in and having 5 or 6 minutes against Salo is going to go well for you? Yeah. I've heard way too many stories, firsthand accounts of current young adult world champion black belts going in and training with Salo and literally leaving the school crying because he tapped them like a ridiculous amount of times in 5 or 6 minutes. So this whole idea that competing in Masters black belt is somehow easier or not as much of an accomplishment, to me, if you just look at those variables right there, it's kind of a ridiculous notion. I do think that adult provides different challenges in the fact that you're dealing with more athleticism and power and strength and all these other variables that maybe get replaced with more technique as the experience level increases when you do get into Masters. Yeah. So it's kind of a interesting balance, but I'm going to tell you, physically there are some monsters in Masters too.
Yeah, for those that don't know, James 300 Foster, yeah, he looks like the guy from 300, but he could easily weigh 300 pounds. The guy is huge. Yeah.
If I let myself get out of control, I think I've hit that on the scale, and I said, whoa, that's too much. I'm 6'5", so I carry it okay, but I'm more comfortable between, anywhere between 270, 280, somewhere in there is where I prefer to walk around at. So, yeah,
I could totally see how being in your division would not be fun. In a Masters division, that's all black belts. That's guys that, and again, you talk about that speed and agility, which is a huge part of jiu-jitsu, I think, again, like you said, at the adult stage. But, jiu-jitsu is like, it could be a sport where it's really slowed down, and the more experience you get, the slower it gets, the more you see things. So I think
if you think about it, I mean, what is jiu-jitsu supposed to be about at its source? Is jiu-jitsu based on athleticism and speed and agility and all these things?
No, it's leverage.
It's supposed to be based on technique, leverage, and timing.
Yeah.
I think people get caught up in the other aspect, and all of that can enhance your jiu-jitsu if you already have good technique, and the technique is in front of those other variables and those other factors in your physical attributes. It can be greatly beneficial to your jiu-jitsu as a competitor. But yeah, experience, man. A lot of the guys I go against have been black belts since I started jiu-jitsu. A lot of the guys I've gone against have been black belts
22 years.
Officially,
Wow.
since I officially started jiu-jitsu 22 years ago. They had already trained all that time and got their black belt, and then maybe some of them had even been a black belt for a year or two at that point.
Yeah, it's like going into Sarah's Academy is always a black belt there, or even a brown belt that's been there forever. Before I even...
And there's levels to it, right? I mean, there's
absolutely.
a big difference between a new black belt and somebody with,
Yeah, and then there's guys, the difference where, we got guys like Aljamain Sterling and Chris Weidman that, they put the squeeze on you, and it feels like...
Great grapplers, right? Just awesome grapplers.
Yeah, that kind of squeeze is just a whole nother level.
It's a whole different ball game right there, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, wrestling is one of the greatest foundations you can have for jiu-jitsu. If you can get a really good wrestler to come in and be open to learning jiu-jitsu technique, that's a scary combination because they have crazy work ethic. They already have amazing base, explosiveness, all these different things. And if they're open to learning jiu-jitsu, man, I've got a couple of white belts right now who are very accomplished wrestlers who are just like an open, they're like sponges for jiu-jitsu. And they're scary, man. They're already catching blue and purple belts. They're already so good after, not even, I think one of them's only been training 6 or 7 months.
Yeah, and again, I think the sport has evolved so much with, being that you probably don't even realize your awareness of it, the level that you're teaching at now compared to maybe 5-6 years ago because of content that you're putting out and things of that nature, where now it's just everything's at a such higher elevation of speeding to the next level. So
the amount of information available is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
The amount of free information available to a new student is incredible. I mean, you could sit on YouTube watching free techniques for the next 5 years and not run out. I mean, you would still be watching free content on there, right? Now,
absolutely.
Of course, there's that, quality control factor we talked about, but still, your new student can get on and find pretty much anything they're looking for technique-wise and then come in and drill it and add it to their game.
Yeah, absolutely. So, last question, James. I don't want to keep you that much, but hey, man, I can't tell you.
I'm enjoying myself.
Yeah, this has been awesome, and really, your insight on jiu-jitsu and everything has been awesome because it really, if you listen deep into what you're talking about, a lot of this translates into every other aspect of life. So, what are some things that you're working on? I know you talked about the instructional, but what are some things you're working up, you've lined up, and where can people find you and follow you?
Well, let's see. We'll cover that first. So, as far as anybody that would like to come and visit my academy, we're totally open to visitors from out of state. You're more than welcome. No drop-in fees or anything like that. Just contact me ahead of time. You can get a hold of me if you go to my website for the academy. It's fosterbjj.com. So FOSTER. bjj.com. I got the class schedule, my number, my email, all the information you need on there. Just get a hold of me. You can come in and visit anytime you're in the Seattle area. My school is located in Kent, Washington. I always bring up Seattle because that's the main city usually that people think of when they refer to Washington State. My school is just about 20 minutes south of Seattle, so it's not that far outside of Seattle. Again, totally open to visitors, would love to train with you. I personally make it a point to roll with anybody that comes and visits from out of state. So I'd love to train with you. I'd love to give you some tips. As far as my personal website, where people can keep track of where I'm going to be as far as seminars and competitions, if they go to James and then the number 300 Foster.com, so James300Foster.com, they can find all that information on there as well. As far as what I have coming up for this year, like I said, I'm taking more time to focus on my academy as well as filming my instructional series. So I'm going to be starting here probably next month on recording those and then getting everything edited. And those I'm planning on providing in a digital format where people get the link to download after they make their purchase, and that way it'll work on their computer, their mobile devices, whatever. I think DVDs and Blu-rays are kind of phasing out. I might do a few to take with me to have at seminars, to have a physical thing for people to get, but planning on going more the modern digital route with it. I will be competing at the Master World Championships in Vegas again. I try to do that every year. That's pretty much my only competition that I have planned for this year. And then I have some seminars that I'm planning on hosting people at my academy, which all those announcements will be available on the websites. And you can find me on social media, Instagram, James300Foster, same on Twitter, same on Facebook for my athlete page. And then you can even try to friend me up. If you look up James Eric Foster, you'll see me on my profile picture, and you can try to give me a friend request on there. I'm not sure. I think I might be over the 5,000 cutoff on there, in which case you can follow to keep track of what I'm doing. And we also have the Academy, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All are at Foster Jiu-Jitsu.
Awesome. Two last things. One is, hey, what a badass collection of lightsabers you got. Guys, you guys don't know, but if you got to follow this guy. He's got the coolest collection of lightsabers ever.
See, I'm kind of new to that. Like, I just started collecting those here not too long ago. My wife actually got me one for I believe Christmas a few years ago, and then I started collecting other ones, and yeah, it's fun, man. I'm a huge nerd, literally and figuratively. I'm a big guy and I'm a nerd, so I have a lot of Star Wars stuff. I have a lot of comic books. I actually draw comic book art. That's my only non-jiu-jitsu related hobby or talent. So since I run my academy full time, and that's my full time occupation, I would say that
that should be stressor.
It kind of combines my hobby and my work, even though I don't really consider teaching jiu-jitsu work. Running the academy is work, and making sure everything on the business side is going well. So drawing is my little escape, and something that I do to wind down, and another skill set that I try to grow and improve with over the years. I've been trying to seriously draw since I was about 13, so I'm maybe a purple belt level in drawing, I would say.
Yeah, keep building that skill, man. That's great.
Maybe I try to draw every day, but it becomes hard to do with all the other life responsibilities that come with running a business. So
absolutely,
that's
I know how that can be.
That's my thing. But yeah, the lightsabers and anything Star Wars related. Actually, the last episode that's up on my podcast, or I should say the most recent episode, is a Star Wars special episode that I did with my brother-in-law. So, and his lightsaber collection and Star Wars collection makes mine look minuscule.
Hey, I know what doesn't look minuscule is your gi collection of shoyo rolls. Man,
Yeah, the
that
show
is.
your roll collection is ridiculous. I'm looking at it behind me. I'm looking at a small part of it, but what will fit in the wardrobe behind me right now?
Yeah, for people that don't know, that's no joke. He's got some collection, guys. Show your roll. That's like he's got a like a closet.
Yeah, I have the full wardrobe, which it takes up a quarter of my man cave, so
That's
it's like
awesome.
a big L-shaped wardrobe down here. There's pictures of it on my Instagram. To get it all in the picture, I have to do a panoramic photo on my iPhone. No joke.
That's awesome,
But
man.
yeah, and then I have a off-site location that contains probably as much show you roll as a what would be considered a large collection, just in the off-sites, because I can't fit everything here anymore. So
That's
yeah,
amazing.
I think it's bad, man. I think the last count was over 170 show you roll geese with no duplicates. So yeah,
That's awesome.
it became an obsession. But I will say this: I'm not one of those guys that doesn't wear them. All of my show you rolls have been worn at least a couple times. It's hard to get through the rotation of them all.
I can imagine.
But yeah, I think they're meant to be used. They're meant to be enjoyed and trained in. Otherwise, I don't see the point in getting them.
I know some of my fellow jiu-jitsu heads will appreciate your collection when they go check out your profile. But
That's awesome, man.
James, man.
It's funny. That's kind of what I think people know me more for that now than any of the other accomplishments. The world title in 2015. It's the first thing people say is, "Oh, I follow you to look at your show your roll collection all the time."
Hey.
Which, hey, you know what?
But you earned that, man. That's a relationship built over time and blood and sweat and tears. People have to look into that part of it instead of just, hey, this guy's got a bunch of nice geese. No, that's a relationship you created over.
Absolutely, and a great family over there. I consider them way more than a sponsor. They're a family, and I'll tell you from personal experience, they're all great people. All the people that run Show You Roll are awesome human beings. And I'll say this too in regard to resume pieces and titles. Like, that world title is cool, but it's nothing compared to how you can positively affect and help people through Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I think people get it twisted and make it way too much about those resume pieces and those medals and titles and team trophies and all that. That is very minor in the grand scheme of things. That's doing a disservice to the power that Jiu-Jitsu can have to positively improve people's lives. So make sure to keep perspective and do what you can to help people through Jiu-Jitsu. It could be as simple as sharing a post on Facebook. If that is the extent of your reach and you can use that to maybe reach somebody, through a friend of a friend of a friend, you never know how that's going to help and improve and bring joy to somebody's life.
Absolutely. One of the questions that I have is, what's the biggest impact or achievement you accomplished? But I think when you told that story about your student, I think that, answered that question wholeheartedly, because that really is the message,
I got to give her a shout out because Miss Elena, she teaches our women's only class, and actually on Valentine's Day at the academy, she was in training hard, and after a decade of training, I had the honor of making her the highest ranked female practitioner that I've ever promoted in all the years since 2003 teaching jiu-jitsu full-time. I got to promote her to her brown belt on Wednesday, so that was a really great honor for me. And I would encourage people to go out and find her book. It's on Amazon. It's in all the normal places. It's called Flowing with the Go, A Jiu-Jitsu Journey of the Soul. And she also has a new book available. It's actually a kid's book that she illustrated, which she's incredibly talented on multiple levels. It's called Frango and Chicken. It's about a gentleman with a disability who's actually a real person in Brazil named Luciano. And he has no arms from just above the elbow down. And it's amazing what he can do and how amazing his jiu-jitsu is with having that limitation. So it's a children's book that teaches, how you can take your limitations and work through them and still achieve great things. So I would encourage people to go and look for that and hit up a pre-order on that.
Awesome. James, I can't begin to thank you enough, man. Awesome stuff. And again, I bow to you, and I just can't thank you enough. Guys, James Foster, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
My
pleasure, brother. I hope to do it again. I hope to have you on my podcast. Yeah, guys, you can check out the Spartan Underground. It's available on all the different podcast platforms. Let's see, we're 11 episodes in, and have the 12th one. I'm actually going to be I'm actually going to be editing and uploading the 12th episode today, featuring Ty Gay, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu black belt and lead singer of Everybody Panics. So that's going to be a great one for you guys to listen to. I hope you enjoy it. Give it a subscribe and a review, and I look forward to you guys listening.
Guys, definitely check it out. Thanks again, James. Guys, don't forget as well to subscribe and rate this podcast 5 stars. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.